Take your getaway with Redline Theater, the 10,000 horsepower podcast with a need for speed. Ride shotgun on a collision course with sci-fi, horror, and other parts unknown. The brakes are out. The chase is on. So strap yourself in and hang on tight. Your joyride starts at redlinetheater.com.
Hi, this is Ross Bain here with Role Playing Public Radio. This is episode 54, Immerse Me. And, of course, with me is Tom and special guest Caleb.
Hey, Ross. Immerse Me, is that like a demand?
Well, that's just what
it's the way it's always spoken in our group.
Yeah, it is. It usually is. Players just demand that I immerse them in a world of fantasy action.
And usually Ross disappoints us.
And as the horrible GM that is...
You're a monster, Ross.
I'm a monster. I'm sorry.
You're not sorry, though.
No, I'm not.
That's why you're a monster.
Because I'm being ironic. I don't know. I'm a hipster GM. I don't know. Anyways, I remember when we said we were going to be a bi-monthly podcast, and then it's been a month. Well, we did put that interview with Jolly Blackburn up, and we are going to. We've had Tom will.
I mentioned before I had some family things going on. Yeah. Grandfather's been dying for the past few months.
Yeah,
so he finally did. So I've been very distracted.
Yeah. So,
and it was very touching that Ross said, "I can't do this without you."
Yeah. Well, no, I can't do it. We can't.
We're bros, man.
Yeah,
we're a team.
Yeah, we're a team. Team RPPR, and all that good stuff. So,
right. So he had my back, and I appreciate that. But it's time to get back in the swing of things. You know,
back in the saddle.
Back in the saddle again.
Yes. So, anyways, we'll start, on doing these more regularly. And before we begin, I would like to mention a couple other podcasts we're going to be playing the promos for during the episode. Redline Theater, that's another Springfield, Missouri podcast by Jim Boltus.
Springfield forever.
Yes, it's radio theater.
Hey,
maybe not
hey,
forever.
Yeah.
Don't you say an unkind word about my hometown.
I would never.
Yeah. Then we have other fellow gaming podcasts, the Drunken Ugly podcast from RPPR listener Alex Romero and friends, Zero Fortitude. Then there's another one, Booster Pack, which Cody is involved with. And they're doing some actual plays as well. And then finally, I would like to mention the RPPR Community Actual Play podcast. It's been very active lately. We have a massive Nyarlathotep campaign, Eclipse Phase, Fiasco, Road Trip. A great masterwork there.
Isn't that the game you wrote, Ross?
It is the campaign I wrote. So if you are a rabid fan of actual play podcasts, and I know many of you out there are, give the RPPR community a fellow podcast, or give them a listen too. Anyways, in this episode, we're going to be talking about game design, adventure design, and immersion, both in the system and how to deal with breaks in immersion, both as a player and how to deal with players that feel that their immersion is broken, so broken that they must stop the game and argue for a while. So first off, we have Caleb here.
Caleb, say something to them.
Yeah.
Well, Here, you can talk when I turn this.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Move the mic a little closer to him. There you go.
Revealed our budget problems here at RPPR headquarters.
Yeah, because actually
thousands of miles below the Earth's crust.
Yes, exactly. Caleb's been you've been very popular with your first two runs as GMs on the Actual Play podcast.
Thank you, everyone, for your kind words.
Yes, Andrew's Fortune, Dirty World, and then more recently, Bryson Springs, a Call of Cthulhu adventure, which has gotten a bunch of comments on the main site, and that's not counting the discussion on the forums. And so, if you're a big fan of Actual Plays, I definitely recommend that because I played in it as Sheldon Baker, ace reporter for the LA Times, and it was very fun.
You were really more of an insanity connoisseur than an ace reporter.
What do you mean? I got the story.
Yeah, at the expense of your mind.
Well, not all of it. I mean,
and everyone's around you. But, hey, could you read this? You were the Call of Cthulhu equivalent of Pull My Finger.
This is true. That's true. I was kind of a dick. This made me crazy a little bit. Well, maybe it won't happen if he does it.
Well, I mean,
scientific method.
Yeah, all right.
So first off, why don't we talk, Caleb? You actually, I don't know if the listeners are aware of this. Bryson Springs, you actually didn't even have the Call of Cthulhu book to write it. You just used the free Quick Start PDF rules. to write it. They're
really good rules.
Yeah, they are. The reason why Call of Cthulhu has been around for so long. I actually did hear that they're going to release a 7th edition soon, and the rules are pretty much going to be the same. So, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But why don't you talk a little bit about how you design Andrew's Fortune, the Noir game, and Bryson Springs, and sort of what you've learned about adventure design since then.
Andrew's Fortune, I just kind of took the something meets something approach to writing, and so I did an Andrew Vox novel called Haiku, and then I'd been watching a whole lot of The Wire, so I kind of fused those together because I thought A Dirty World was... I was really new to gaming. Dirty World was my favorite system that we'd played so far, so I wanted to do that. And so I modernized it. I started off on a program called Lucid Chart, which is free online. And I did a flow chart before everything else. So I started with the goal, which was obviously Andrew. Mm-hmm. And then I made it so I had only one path to get to the goal, so I could control things easily. But then every branch after that, I tried to make as complicated as possible. And I could give you the PDF. We could throw it up.
Yeah, no, that would be great. I think that would be a great bonus for you.
And it's pretty, it's like Cthulhu's tentacles. There's arrows going everywhere. And I wanted to give everybody as many options as I could to get to the actual goal. That said, it ended up taking 2.5 to 3 weeks to write the damn thing. And while it was a good, fun game, definitely wanted to speed that up.
So you felt like you over-prepared a little bit for it?
Oh, yeah. There were huge swaths of stuff that, even with 6 players, that we never got.
Okay.
We never touched. So,
do you think... of course, that's sort of the one of the main things about game design is that there's a major difference between writing a game for yourself and writing a game for publication. In publication, you kind of have to take that more exhaustive approach. But when you're writing a game for yourself, you only need to design what's actually going to be played. Of course, the great thing about gaming is you're not going to be exactly sure of what that is, which you find out in Bryson Springs.
I did. So Bryson Springs, I did the flow chart. But Andrew's Fortune almost went into a third session. So we were at the long end of 6 hours. So I definitely cut back on the complexity and the amount that I prepared, even though I still wrote 9 pages for it. And while it worked out, especially considering I was new at the system, the way it worked out, I never could have predicted it.
You're talking about Bryson Springs?
Yes, Bryson Springs. So my lack of preparation definitely had I was more on my skates during that episode trying to make things up on the fly. I never intended to kill the sheriff, but I had 2 player characters locked in a room with no escape, so I had to figure some way to motivate them out of there. I never anticipated the beatdown in the Hooverville rather than, actually interrogating them, but Professor Badass would not be designed. He wanted to get tenure at whoop-ass university. It worked out, but I definitely felt my lack of preparation and I was a little more anxious that game.
If you're going to approach a scenario now, what would you do what would you do differently now from Andrew's Fortune and Bryson Springs? How would you change your approach, or what have you learned in terms of design? Because you've designed a few adventures since then too.
Yeah. Right? I'm sticking with the shortened web of deceit for the little flow chart. I like to start off with that though, but I'm going to write more extensively on the NPCs within that flow chart because I kind of flubbed both on Bryson Springs, and I don't think you can do that.
Yeah. What do you mean? How do you feel like you flubbed in it? I didn't notice as a player.
Well,
let's get behind the black
sentence
box.
Fragments. Yeah. Stuff that would just remind me in the writing. And Andrew's Fortune, I wrote absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of different points on that flowchart that I had to examine, and then location plays a huge part in games too, whatever sandbox you're throwing people into play in. So I wrote a lot for that, and Andrew's Fortune as well. Bryson Springs, I really just wrote up the locations a lot. As for the NPCs, I wrote little sentence fragments, reminders of what they look like, and then I had the flow chart for how they were related, and we just went. And
Yeah.
while I prepared it a lot faster, it was, I had to stay on my toes that one. Dinner and a show. That wasn't scripted. And I assumed they would meet the Kellys, the main cult family, otherwise, and get their idea. But I had to make the Kellys like really active, as opposed. I thought they would be found earlier, but I'm really glad I rolled amnesia for Aaron because that worked out as a great plot device to drag his ass to the climax.
I don't think you would have had much problem either way. I think Aaron was if Aaron would metagame to get there. I mean, one way or the other, if nothing else, because I think his character was very not going to be. You were right; he wouldn't be denied. So you had that going for it. Yeah, yeah, this is true. Now you also talk about you didn't base the monster in Bryson Springs on any specific Cthulhu mythos entity. You're just going for the sort of thematic feel for it. So what'd you do for that? I know you mentioned this to me earlier before we start recording. So what did you talk a little bit about that?
Well, to me the mythos is pretty, at least in terms of translating it into a role-playing game, not to discount Lovecraft or anything. It's pretty complex. But in a role-playing game, it seems pretty simple. Scary shit, give it a really, really old history, and give it a trail of people who are broken or dead because of the scary shit.
Right.
And then that's how you link them together. You have really scary thing, really old place where it comes from, and then a trail of dead and insane people linking the two.
The little breadcrumbs.
Yeah, and that's what the investigators find. So I read this Thomas Ligotti story, which name eludes me, but it's in the book Teatro Grotesco, where it's a typical Thomas Ligotti story. There's a pharmacist who hates his job and a crazy haunted house, and the haunted house glows, and this life-size marionette doll comes in and gives him leaves for money. And the guy, is disturbed about the nature of the universe and time, and then it leaves. I'm like, well, that could be scarier. And then I looked up the origin of puppets, and puppetry is traced back to the Shang dynasty, in which is 1046 BC or something in China. And I'm like, well, that's really old, and life-size puppets are really scary, so we'll just attach them together.
Well, I think that's one good thing for any GM to think of is that, especially for your home games, if you're not trying for publication, rip off stuff and reshape it to fit your game. I mean, he took a Thomas Ligotti story and said, "Oh, well, I can make this scarier," and so that's what he did. I mean, you take that base idea and then you twist it around so you can make aliens, only instead of acid blood, they have something else. Different shape and slightly different behaviors. Maybe take aliens and combine them with a real world parasite, like some of those weird insect parasites that mind control the things they
which is what I did for my next game. Thanks, Ross.
Seriously?
Yeah, you really just
oh, wow.
honed right in on it. Total lack of originality. That's my secret, folks.
Well, that's been something I've always been creeped out. There's one parasite in particular called the Saculina. I probably mentioned on the episode before, on the podcast before, where they infect crabs, and what they'll do is they'll force the crabs to do what they want. And they'll force the crabs to actually mutilate themselves, rip off their own arms, and take care of the parasite's prey or young eggs, and then kill them. So that that's really creepy. So but I mean, there's tons of alien things out there and that you can use for inspiration. So any other things about your approach so far, or that what you've learned from play testing, basically?
I don't know. I'm getting interested in the nerdy side of stuff. So I'm going to try and do weirder things. So now, hopefully everyone can see me fall on my face in the next few actual playcasts. But I got a lot of comments on Bryson Springs, and I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Especially I really like the comment that said that you told the characters they were terrified, and you can't do that because that's role playing their characters for them. And I thought that was really interesting, and I totally understand that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that's a philosophical question. Where do your emotions come from?
Yeah.
Because I told them they were scared. I didn't tell them what to do about it.
Right.
They could man up. They could piss themselves. They could, do whatever they wanted.
Well, for Agent Filigree, there's no choice.
Yeah, Jack Filigree would just kill it with his eyes.
Fucking puppet, fuck you.
Yeah, pretty much. But I mean, I would choose piss myself and run away.
Well, one thing about that, like, you know, that I feel like you don't choose your emotions. I mean, like, you do have conscious control, you do have free will, but like, if you're afraid, you're afraid. That's an instinctive thing. I mean, you know, that kind of happens. But
yeah, I don't think there's an answer to it. I think it goes much deeper than you know who's in control of your emotions. You know, I think that's a deeper question than a role playing podcast. But I thought that was an interesting mechanic, so I'm going to try and build something with that in there.
One question, actually, as a game design question, that I haven't asked you about yet, but I'm very curious about is, you know, you had pre-gens for Bryson Springs, and one of them, you know, you had the reporter, you had the professor who was there by coincidence. The reporter was there because he was looking to investigate. Then you have the FBI agent who's sent there, but then you had the other player character, a mafia hitman who was arrested by the FBI agent. Now, why did you have him? Because I could see that being, you know, with our group, we handled it, you know, easily, and the player, David, you know, loved it. You know, he was very into the game, but like, I could see some players, you know, would really hate that, to have their character start the game in handcuffs. You know, so what was your thinking on that one?
It wasn't.
Okay.
Because, you know, that would be like terrible. Like if I tried to run that at a con, I would, you know, when they found my corpse on the table, they'd,
all that was left was a bloody stump.
Yeah, nobody in the world would convict him. But I don't know. I was thinking from a more cinematic perspective. I mean, my favorite horror movies or scenarios are the one where not only are the main characters you know, not working together at the start. They're actively opposed against each other, but, you know, they encounter something so, you know, mind-numbingly terrible, they have to join forces. And I loved the way that worked. I couldn't be happier with the way that worked out in our personal game. Like, now from a game design perspective, I'm probably just begging to get in trouble. But the fact that, like, David was caged up for the majority of the game, and then he comes out, and then everyone is running away trying to save themselves in the finale. And David just like mans up and like attacks the demon thing with a knife and gets his face horribly burned. And he is the, you know, the white.
But got to leave with the money
and the Thompson. You know, he's the white knight of the scenario. I just thought that was, you know, in terms of a character arc, was fantastic.
At the end, I just handed back his Thompson.
Oh yeah, that was wonderful. So it worked out exactly as I wanted it to work out, but I think I just got really, really lucky in that regard. So
you think if you're going to run Bryson Springs, for example, at a convention, or if you're writing it for publication, you'd have like everyone to be more or less equal in terms of like starting out, like all FBI agents or something like that?
Well, if I was writing for publication, I think I'd include it in there. But I you know, like, so I had more people in there, like. The FBI guy had a partner originally. So, and I would never play a Call of Cthulhu mission with like 7 people. God, that'd be kind of a nightmare group.
Well, you can do certain, like...
So maybe if you need like a 5th or a 6th guy, you throw in a prisoner, and like that's what you get for showing up late.
Right. I mean, we talked about this in previous episodes. I think it kind of depends on the type of scenario. If you're doing like a zombie survival horror thing where the whole thing is like run, shoot, and make quick decisions, and some players you could do, because you could always off one pretty easily, and like, you know, you turn left when you should have turned right. You're surrounded, and you get eaten by zombies.
Yeah.
But like an investigation, you know, that's a different thing where there's a mystery, because then there's too many people doing that. So now we also have another, you know, Call of Cthulhu designer here in terms of Tom, you know, with his Divine Fire trilogy. Now, was Divine Fire the first one Call of Cthulhu adventure you wrote, or was that the first one?
It's the first one I ever wrote.
Okay. So, and that's gotten, you know, obviously a very good response as well. So, like, what was your design process? You know, we have the flowcharts on here, but
actually, the first thing I write down on paper is the plug sentence.
Okay.
Like, in one sentence, describe what's going on.
Okay, like that's a log line for a movie. You know.
Yeah, that's the first thing I think of. And so in this one, you know, for the Divine Fire Part 1, it was people stuck in a Nazi research base in the mountains during a snowstorm.
Okay. So you start with that evocative image. Is that something you always do, or is that...
Yeah, it's pretty much for every scenario I do.
Okay. So how did it go from there? Do you just build up from that?
I have a thing where... kind of, you know, I design something, but it's always me-centric when I design a scenario. So, what I write
What do you mean by that?
I have my own personal view of what's cool and what's going to be a great scene.
Okay.
And so I always write it that way.
All right.
So, like in the first one, it's the first time, the first time I ran it, it was a squad of German soldiers.
Right.
And it's because that'd be, just because you're playing Germans now. Not World War I Germans where it was more ambiguous. You're horrible Nazis. But,
Okay.
it's like you're going in there, you're under orders, and then, and one of them was actually an SS guy who was sent in, just to observe this whole situation, maybe take charge if he had to. But the way it worked out, when you're a squad of soldiers with already an established, line of command, and you're all heavily armed, the survival, the horror part's kind of lost.
Okay.
So really, I only learn the mistakes of the game when I finally run it for a group that isn't made up of entirely me.
Right.
So that's
Well, that's an interesting thing because I always feel like the adventures I write or that I create are the ones I want to play in. Now, I mean, I try and keep it varied, of course, but that's kind of interesting to find out of how much do you focus on your personal taste and how much do you consider the audience, the players in this case.
I consider them, but also I just consider they're going to find it as cool as I do.
Okay, so all right.
It's really like after the session, after that I ran the whole thing the first time.
Yeah.
It went very well, but then suddenly everyone had constructive criticism. Mm-hmm. And I do I have a thing. I'm not immune to it. In fact, I take it in very greatly. And as I was driving home that day, I'm like, oh my God, I could have done this better and this better. Why didn't I do this?
Okay.
And so really, it was so much that I know now I can make this even way better. So I had to run it again.
Okay. Yeah, we did do the two plays.
And it really did. This time playing prisoners being sent there.
Yeah.
So it worked out so much better. And the second run was exactly how I would want it to go.
Okay. Well, in terms of building the camp, and you set it up. Caleb, he did a very both his scenarios have been very plot mystery focused. There was an ongoing mystery, and you had to solve it. That was the central action. And this one, Divine Fire 1, is very much a location based thing.
Yeah.
You're in this place.
I designed the whole.
There's
base.
a mystery there, but it's you could even ignore it if you just wanted to survive. So
yeah, I did design the whole base.
Okay.
And the first time around, I went crazy nuts on what was in every building and every room.
Okay.
I had it written down, the main command building, the first floor is the main foyer. The main front door is locked, but there's a body frozen against it. There's the back door has a tripwire. Then I go up to the second floor, which had the colonel's office.
Yeah.
The guy frozen and dead, slit wrists in the frozen bathtub. And so the first thing I did, I wrote out everything that was in every single building.
Yeah.
The next thing I did was then I list a list of crazy shit that could happen. Because the first time especially I ran it, and the place is manipulating your mind, trying to do what you want, what it wants you to do. So I just created a whole list of just weird shit I could throw.
And those were independent of the location. You could throw them in.
I could throw them in anywhere.
Okay. So you could, no matter what the players did, you had something to use at them. So use for them.
Yeah. And some things I could predict players, like when there's a radio there.
Yeah.
And one of the players did have electronic repair.
Yeah.
I knew he would, someone would try to fix the radio.
Okay.
So I definitely planned around that to have.
Any other things like that?
I knew people would, when they, of course they would, I knew they would encounter the German private at some point.
Right. The one who is still alive.
Yes. And so that's why I had him having all the guns.
Okay. And the players would be drawn to him regardless, because if there's one thing that PCs do, it's that they get weapons whenever they can.
Yeah. No matter what the scenario.
You could be playing My Little Pony, and
I kill a pony, take its horn.
Yes.
I stab something with it.
Exactly. Or the ponies are or the players of the ponies, and they we kill the soldiers and take their guns, but you don't have hands.
Yeah. Now, and also another thing in the first Divine Fire, I didn't really have to do too much for the monsters.
Yeah.
Because most of them were just effed up versions of things that already exist.
What do you mean?
There's rats that are now about the size of a small dog.
Oh, okay.
And there was the captain and the horse.
Well, one thing Caleb talked about when he was designing monsters for Bryson Springs, he took the idea from the short story, but he had the idea of the puppets, marionettes, and he kept to that theme very consistently with the ideology.
And I had my own.
Okay, so how did
mine was normal creatures, people, animals, just warped beyond all recognition by.
Okay.
In the first game, it was just the artifact. I didn't even have a clue what it was.
Right.
But yeah, the second time around, some kind of nuclear reactor built off of blueprints that were over 4,000 years old.
Again, also going back to the old monsters plus old scary stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, then Divine Fire 2, I actually designed it and let it run as it went. I didn't want to change anything.
Okay, well, Divine Fire 2, you mentioned that, and that's more like one of Caleb's adventure. That's more of a plot focused mystery where the idea is to find, actually kind of like Andrew's Fortune. You're trying to find a person.
Yeah.
You're trying to find, in this case, Kohler, the German
private.
from first one. So did you use a flowchart like Caleb did, or did you? What was
Actually,
your?
I did. I did a flow chart on how everyone was connected to everyone else.
Okay.
First it starts with Kohler. And then, actually who he would contact, which was his sister and her husband. Mm-hmm. And then, which contact would lead you to what other contact.
Yeah.
And
so it was not like the actions in the game, it was the relationships between NPCs. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And also eventually leading you from Germany to finally France, where it ended up.
Okay. So was there just the one, so you just did one flowchart then?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's mainly, and to me, the idea was keep it to like a 1950s Cold War spy movie.
Right.
With just some monsters in it.
Okay.
In fact, really, there were only two.
There was Grunfeld and...
then the thing that was summoned at the end.
That was Azathoth, wasn't it? Or was it?
Yeah, actually it was.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Yeah, but of course, you were locked in a bunker that... I was tempted that someone would actually lift up one of the viewports.
I thought somebody did.
I forget. I don't know. I don't think one of the players did.
Oh, okay. I thought Jason or Aaron did, but maybe that was just my...
Well, Jason was already...
yeah.
Okay, actually, but the second part, the Jason interrogation scene, I did think of that up entirely on the spot the second time around.
Okay, so again, you have to improv some things.
Yeah,
were there, there were obviously some unexpected turns in, Caleb's games.
Yeah.
What about you? Like, what was the most unexpected thing, and how did you deal with it?
Well, actually, okay, I admit, Aaron surprised me by being really assertive and like, no, I'm going to crash the truck to get the ghoul out.
All right. Yeah, that was pretty. Aaron is, the beginning of Professor Badass.
Let me tell you, you really enjoyed playing an agent that belonged to a totalitarian regime.
Well, yeah, I mean, threatening people with Siberia,
Yes.
for any. You fail the skill check, Siberia. Was pretty entertaining.
If I make a few minor changes if I were to run.
So, what have you learned in terms of just an overall adventure design, like scenario design and immersion?
I think the important thing is first of all, I am more of an action oriented GM.
Yeah.
But I'm really trying to go outside my comfort zone, which is what I did with that one.
With Divine, because it was
Divine Fire 2.
With 2, because that was more of a plot.
And investigative.
Yeah,
and that one I kind of learned like what I really need. I had to get the clues down better.
Yeah.
I had to make them clearer, easier to find, and also plan ahead so that it's not so if you fail a spot hidden roll, then you're just going to miss the most vital clue that in that scene.
Have you? You should try and run a gumshoe game, Fear Itself or Trail of Cthulhu, because that's the whole system is designed to prevent that, since clues are gathered automatically. It's how you interpret them. I've run a few games of that, but
anyway, and also I've recently designed Divine Fire Part 3.
Yes, we actually playtested that once, and that actually
okay. Yeah, the thing is, I made a lot fewer mistakes than I made in Divine Fire 1.
Okay,
I did redesign it, but that was only because. But there was just some that. It was a few changes that just made it so much better.
Okay.
Why
don't you talk about like first the playtest of it? So.
Well, the playtest actually I thought went very well. It was modern day.
Yeah.
And it's a friend of the players disappears, and he was writing a new book.
Right.
Which was entitled "Divine Fire: The True Secret of the Nazi Nuclear Weapons Program."
Right.
And it was basically his friend unfortunately found something about Divine Fire. So, I'm going to run it again and have it's going to be posted, so I'm not going to give everything away. But
right. But, yeah, that was the one thing. You said you didn't want me to post the recording of it.
Right, because wanted to start
over.
That session was vital to me, and that's really the best way I learn.
Yeah.
Is I will take an unfinished system and just play test it, and then pretty much everything I need to fix, I find out immediately.
Yeah.
With this group.
Yeah. And what was the problem? I mean, you don't have to spoil it, but
okay. Well, the biggest problem I had is you pointed it out.
Yeah.
Was the spooky shit? Some spooky shit needed to happen earlier.
Right.
Because it was pretty much just follow a list of clues back and forth to get you to where you need to go.
Yeah.
Which it was. I thought, as Caleb said, good. It was pretty good investigation, but nothing really creepy happened.
Right.
And I needed to put in some creepy at the closer to the beginning.
Right.
And that's really what I need to change. And I thought of a perfect way to do it. Just like nope.
Right. Wait.
It's essentially this one particular scene.
Did you flowchart it again?
I did.
You did.
I did.
Okay.
I did flowchart it, and this time it's more. It's once again it's following the clues and the experts and the witnesses to get to from A to B.
Right. So yeah, that's a very playtesting is obviously important, and not every scenario is going to work out. I mean, we could have finished at the conclusion. I mean,
but after I realized,
Yeah.
at the end of that session, I realized I cannot possibly let this stand.
Right.
Because I can.
You can do it better.
Yeah, this would be a mediocre session at best for me. I think I can make it a really good game if I made the changes.
Right.
So that's what I want to do, and I'm not in the least bit shy of running a game that's not quite finished with this group, because I know by the time I finish running this that one part, I'm going to know exactly what I need to do to finish it.
Right. There you go. I think if you're in a role playing group that's fortunate enough where you can do that, you count yourself lucky that you can perfect your work and you learn from your mistakes and learn from your experiences. Now, I've talked about my approach to running adventures in the past, so I'm not going to go over it in like great detail. But it's kind of funny. It's funny because I don't flowchart. I have in the past, but I don't as a rule. One thing, because I'm usually running a campaign game, but I do what I call the ecosystem approach, where I think of who all. It's a way of doing the flowchart. Is I think of every NPC, every relevant actor in the game, and what they're trying to do, and then I have them fill out their agenda. Okay, well, they're going to be doing this, they're going to be doing this, blah, 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 blah. And then when the players go in, they see what's going on and they interact with everything. And then I see how the NPCs will then react to them. Now, in terms of a mystery, what I do is I figure out what the crime was, what clues were left behind, and then I work back from there. So I don't actually get as far as flowcharting it out, but it's sort of, I guess, a similar process. Is you have to understand the relationships between. The core of it is you have to understand the relationships between all the NPCs and the locations and the clues, especially in a very plot-focused game. Now, if you're doing an action game, it's not necessarily as important. If the PCs don't necessarily understand every bit of the villain's scheme, as long as they know as Mendoza is bad and has to be shot because he killed Scully, and whatever else. So
or Sos is taking your criminal empire.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have to kill them all.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's kind of the overall idea, is that you have to understand what's going on, because if you don't understand it, your players certainly won't. So Caleb, you said you had something to say, or
well, I think playing to your strengths is pretty massively important too.
Yeah.
So I've only run 2 games, but I don't run action games because I'm shitty at doing combat. I'm shitty at playing combat. I'm shitty at rolling. Shitty at keeping track of it. I rely on Ross and the rules lawyers to get me through combat phases of games, because I just don't know that. So if I would say, if you want just shit and blood and hellfire, and you just wanted to if you wanted to Gaga 2.0, you want to hit the fan and just say, okay, have a grenade. I wouldn't flowchart anything. Play to your strengths.
Yeah, it plays to the genre too.
Yeah.
I think
and I really promote the whole, something meets something approach, because, scenarios I've thought out that aren't at least some way inspired by some form of other popular entertainment, I can't imagine us actually playing and getting through, because I just think they're going to be too weird and.
You mean licensed games?
No, coming up with your plot, something just whole cloth, noir out of noir. Know what the genre is, and you're just going to write something completely original. If you can do it, that's great. But I feel like the whole Aliens meets Ice Storm, or Cthulhu monster in a Steinbeck novel, which was my Bryson Springs inspiration.
Yeah.
Or I feel like that's good because you at least give somebody the players a common vocabulary to start off with,
Right.
and then from there they can make their own original story. So, whereas if I was like writing a book or something, I'd feel awful doing something like that. I'm kind of comforted by it in a role.
Well, I think the problem. I mean, that is one good approach, and if that's what you're comfortable with, the problem is if you try to lean too heavily on your source material, because there are.
Oh yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, because I mean, you got to give the players room to actually, put their own stuff into it, put their own work into it, because if you rely too heavily, say, on like a King Arthur type thing, then like if the players aren't King Arthur, then they have to sit back and let King Arthur and all his knights do all the fun things.
Well, with the mixing influences thing, it's a more is more philosophy. Like the more crap you put in, the more original it's going to be. Like if you're mixing weird genre with weird genre with weird genre, it's going to be kind of unrecognizable. Yeah, as coming from something whole cloth. So that's something I've been trying to do too.
And one thing, Tom mentioned his. Well, actually, this is for Caleb. Tom mentioned, he designed adventures that he would want to basically play in. The stuff that he thinks would be awesome. So, and because of that, in the Divine Fire 1, he didn't have the ability to. He had to get feedback in order to realize, this would be even better. So, what about you? I mean, from my perspective, I run adventures that I'd want to play in. And other than that, though, I'm not like too fixated on my own stuff. I obviously do have reoccurring themes that I hit too much, like undead, but
no, what are you talking about?
Monstrous PCs.
Well, actually, that's for you, Tom. But for you, Caleb. What about you in terms of like, you came up, Cthulhu meets Steinbeck. Like, was that because you've been,
yeah. I'm an English teacher, so yeah, I'm a big fan of Steinbeck. I don't know what I like to play yet because I'm so new. I played like 2 games of D&D in all of high school and then didn't play at all. And my first game ever was Aaron's The Haunting. So, really, I had never played a great Call of Cthulhu.
Have we put that
game
on the main podcast yet, or is that just?
I think that was a ransom
one, for Aaron's ransom.
If you want to hear that,
I need to put that online. I think I'll put that online.
Tomlinsonberg, my first character with the Little Crusaders champ.
But
so I didn't really play a great Call of Cthulhu game, and I thought the Dirty World game we played though was awesome. So that's definitely why it was the first game I wrote. But I don't know what character I like to play. I couldn't characterize it.
In terms of adventures, when you're writing an adventure, what do you? I
guess investigative's more my style. Just because like I said, shitty at combat. I prefer figuring out the story and having player interaction than to blow up thing.
Tom mentioned going outside his comfort zone. Doing things that he wasn't as comfortable doing. So maybe for you, like, your next adventure should be an action scenario, and like maybe try and think of ways around the action but not combat, per se.
Well, that's what I tried to do in the Wild Talent scenario we're going to try and run.
So we'll see how that works.
It's a crawl, because it's just a crawl. I don't know if it's going to work or if I TPK everybody because I'm not good at balancing, but
we'll see.
We'll see if it works.
Nice. So we'll have to see that on the podcast, and you guys will see it in 2018 because I'm so far behind on the podcast. Now, we also talked, about one thing. So, our episode title is Immerse Me, and so we talked about how to create immersion through, adventure design.
I'm sensing what if the immersion's too great?
Right. Well, or not enough.
Not enough.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges, both once you create the adventure, how do you keep the players immersed in it? And if you're a player, what do you do when the immersion's broken? And
are you referring to an incident?
Well, yeah. The impetus behind this is behind a recent episode of Wild Talents that we haven't posted yet because it's actually, we had guest player RJ come on, and if you remember him, from the New World campaign, episode 36 of the New World campaign, he goes into a whole rant about how I'm not role-playing ogres properly, and he does sort of a similar thing in this episode of Wild Talents. Is that, long story short, Tom's player character is a wanted fugitive, and he gets the players get surrounded by the cops. The cops say, "You're Tom. You're wanted fugitive. Surrender now, or we're going to open fire." And the other players are they're not wanted on anything, so they're free to leave, but they want Tom to give up. And so Tom gives up. He surrenders, and then Tom's character has superhumanly strong, like pick up cars and kill people with one punch. And so what he does is they give him a drug that nullifies his super strength temporarily, for like 12 hours or something like that, just to make sure that he's not going to freak out and kill some cops or whatever.
Tear the police car in half.
Right. And RJ freaks out about this, and Jason does to a certain extent because Tom doesn't. Tom's like fine with it. I mean, I don't think you object to it at all.
That made total sense to me.
Yeah. That I was apparently suspending habeas corpus, which so the game literally we had like a 20-minute discussion about whether or not this was even legal, and this is a fictional world with superhumans in it.
I'm actually saying no, this is totally legal.
Yeah.
I can totally see this.
Yeah, my point is the cops are not going to trust a wanted murderer. They don't use the honor system to make wanted murders that are Hulk level strong to not break out, and if they can help it. So that RJ's immersion was broken. He's also broken because his character failed a trauma check and was scared by something he thought wasn't scary enough to traumatize him. So, why don't we talk about system immersion and immersing in the game? Where do you draw the line? What do you do? That kind of thing. So,
well, okay. I'll say the thing that he failed to roll on, I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I freaked out over seeing something in a tank.
Yeah.
Some horrible mutated just thing.
Yeah.
Floating in this cryogenic tank. I did not. Stability. Oh, that's a skill. You need that, huh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was earlier in the game. Yeah. I mean, that's actually.
We didn't know, but like, no. Okay, no.
That was actually
no. I could have changed my character, altered it a little bit, or I could just I get some experience points. No, then I'll be sure to buy some stability next time.
Right. The ability to resist being scared, basically. That's actually one of the things the players, because they were unfamiliar with Wild Talents, they didn't realize. In Wild Talents, the sanity check is called a stability check, basically, and you need a certain skill to resist that. And no one really had that skill
because we didn't realize it.
Yeah, and so everybody was freaked out the first few times they had to make stability checks.
I think everyone in the group, they realized, but everyone's reaction is, then we should buy some stability in it with our experience.
So it didn't break the immersion for the system. Like, oh God,
It actually worked out character wise.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Because in this particular campaign it would have because your characters were amateurs.
Yeah, we all start off as bungling, half-assed superheroes, and then we get shot at and piss ourselves. Like that, it makes sense. It's how it would happen.
Working class Joe.
Yeah. I mean, so I failed my first few stability checks until I thought it worked out in terms of our campaign.
Right.
But yeah, like the whole habeas corpus trauma check issue was ridiculous. I remember the first time I watched Alien.
Yeah.
Klaxon blaring, Ripley's trying to get to the escape pod. It could be anywhere. And I remember my mom, because she's my mom, saying her hair looks too nice. Look at all that steam. It'd be way too. And like that was the point my mom fixated on. Like Ripley's haircut looked too permed in the steam from the long haul spaceship with gravity with the alien and just totally glossed over that and really really focused on Sigourney Weaver's roots. And I just felt like we had a 20-minute discussion about Sigourney Weaver's roots at not being realistic enough. And that's what I've noticed about immersion in games, that it's from a story perspective, because I'm total noob with RPG, it's just bizarre, the stuff people fixate on.
Actually, speaking of immersion in Alien, one thing I actually bitched about, I thought, the way to actually activate the self-destruct system on the ship, she had to get a tool, go to these 5 panels in the ground, pull them out of the ground, open them up, adjust some controls to finally activate them. Which, that made sense to me. You don't just want a button that says self-destruct.
A big red shiny button.
Yes.
Candy-like button.
And of course, the count is, the self-destruct happens in 20 minutes, but you have 10 minutes, a window of 10 minutes to turn it off. Like, okay, I even get that. But the process to turn it off is longer than the one to turn it on. I don't know why, but I had a huge discussion about that with someone. That was me doing I can't get immersed in this. That she has to basically readjust the controls, put the tool in, push them back down. And of course, by the time she finishes, she's like 5 seconds past the 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And she's even screaming like, "I turned your systems back on, mother! Stop it!" And of course, it's like, sorry, like the cold female voice of the computer says, "The ship will self-destruct in T-minus 10 minutes."
Yeah, I mean there is that, and it's kind of interesting. You tie into the emotions earlier. Can you choose the times when you obsess over something or not? I mean, like at a certain point, like I think everybody fixates on something like that one time or another. But I mean, like, some people are more prone to it than others.
No, I'm not saying I'm not saying my mother was wrong that her hair would look worse, or that the self-destruct sequence should be longer, or that the Goddess of War shouldn't have, been bothered by that trauma check. Like, I'm not saying those things are wrong. It's just the fixation upon it gets bizarre. Like, I felt like my character in the Dark Sun campaign was fixated on the fact that I knew absolutely no one, like, in game, and that I would constantly bring up in inappropriate times, like, who are you people? But we were player characters and we were moving on. I just did it for humor. I didn't just stop the game and say, like Bryson Springs, I was very appreciative of all the firearm comments, and I was, I understand that I did wrong on that, and I hadn't shot any trees lately and things like that, and they're all very accurate, but there's so much shit in that game that's inaccurate, like historically, based on physics, and just the fact that we're honing in on like make and model of gun, it's a weird thing. I think it's unpredictable. I don't think you can plan for it. So.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's true. You definitely cannot plan for it. I mean, I've had everyone, con games and stuff like that. People fixate on the wrong things.
You're the horrible monster for because
because I can't let diplomacy on other players. Yes, but the thing is, you can't plan for it, but you can deal with it. So I mean, I don't know.
Well, we brought it up. We fixated, but we didn't latch onto it for like 20 minutes.
Well,
I mean, I'm talking about the firearm stuff. We commented on it, but then we moved on.
Well, none of us were the level of firearm experts. I think if one of us was like a gun shop owner, then I think we might have like mentioned, the buckshot, blah 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 blah, because none of us had the expertise in that given area. But if we were talking about like,
except Deagles. Well, we're masters of that.
Yeah, twin Deagles.
Only if there's two.
Yeah.
One, we're powerless.
Two. We are a samurai of Deagles.
Right. But, I mean, I think all of us have issues about that we could spurge out on. If I got the name of, a Steinbeck, novel wrong or something like that, or I got the plot of Slaughterhouse 5 wrong, then, that could cause some issues.
Or if you got a character wrong from the movie Face Off.
But I think it's inevitable in gaming yeah, exactly. Or I got the gun wrong, like, was he using...
It's a Springfield Armory 45.
No, it was a Deagle, Tom.
No, it wasn't.
Okay, see?
I will fucking end you!
The question then becomes, how do you deal with it in the game? Either as a GM or as a player. Like, in that situation, it kind of dragged on.
Well, as a GM, I think the first thing you should do is just mention in your head, really, like, is this actually worthy to pause the action in the game to talk about?
Right.
Is this actually something that could kill the story? I think you have to do that in your head, and most GMs can do that pretty quickly.
Right.
And if you go, no, this is not worthy to pause the game for 10 to 20 minutes to talk about it, you just say, all right, well, we'll talk about this later.
Right.
But honestly, okay, if it is something,
if
it is something, I think, okay, fine, talk about it.
Well, I mean, like in
in a case of
I know I've been overridden several times with minor things, like
Oh, in the case of we fail at the stability rolls, we bring it up and it's worth talking about. We talked about it for like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh well, then okay, we'll buy some dice of stability next when we get with our experience.
Right. But I think, in the habeas corpus case, I mean, that was a crucial thing, to represent, that the government had some ability to keep superhumans in check, and, that Tom's character wasn't going to be able to, play possum. He wasn't going to be able to bust out later after the other players got away. Mm-hmm. So, that was a plot crucial thing.
Especially when it took, 4 agents to actually carry me to the...
Right, because your character's 400 pounds. He's like a big, massive man-bat, type creature. So, I mean, mean, with that, I wasn't. I mean, there have been times where I backed down when I've said this is happening, but no, okay, fine. I know, like in the New World campaign, the players were attacking this fortress. The Thieves Guild held, and you guys had an NPC kobold rogue disarm all the traps because none of you took the trap skill to thievery to actually disarm traps. None of you, not a single one of you out of 6 characters. And so the NPC was doing it, and I said, oh well, he failed the check. He gets hit by poison gas and he dies. And the player's like, no. We spend like 5 minutes arguing.
We do that. Okay, I joined in that, but I had an ulterior motive.
Yeah.
I really like kobolds, and I really like that character.
You can bring them back to life.
Yeah, I know, but that's an inconvenience. It costs money.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just, you guys, technically by the rules, I wasn't, I can't really just instantly kill people in D&D for this issue. There's no save or die type things.
Yeah, I think we said, okay, what kind of gas is Ross? Is it a neurotoxin, a hemotoxin?
No, I think it was just by the rules. It's like, no, even if he did so blah, 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 so much damage, he'd have a healing surge left, or he'd be able to do this, or he'd be able to do that, or blah, 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 blah. And so it never really stopped, so I just gave in with that. But with the habeas corpus thing, I didn't, because I felt crucial to the plot. And it just...
No. I know that's exactly what they do.
Yeah. So, I mean, at a certain point, if the player's not going to back down on that, I mean, like, what can you do as a GM or as a player? I mean, how do you deal with, like, Caleb, you haven't really had that, experience yet. I mean, you probably...
I know how I would have dealt with
Okay, how would you have dealt with the...
Inquiring minds want to know.
Yeah.
no offense, death. Inexplicable, unsavable death. After minute 15 of the discussion... and misquoting law books, I would... And you did suggest, all right, we'll talk about this later. And then we proceeded not to talk about it later, but right then, murder.
Yeah.
Meteorite from the sky, brain hemorrhage. Probably a bad idea, but my solution.
Actually, I thought it was something we could do.
Yeah.
Go the Jack Filigree approach. Just punch him right in the face.
Yeah.
And
combat.
And of course, the guy's wearing a holy blessed... power fist of Odin.
Yeah.
It's like, no, your ass is knocked out.
Yeah, 10 hard dice of damage to the head. So.
But luckily, it's all shock damage.
Yeah, no.
So you're unconscious.
No, 10 shock damage would still kill you for the head in Wild Talents, because you can only take 8.
Well, just this time, it's blessed, so it does 1 less to kill you.
Oh, I see.
It's a merciful weapon.
I see. Nice. But yeah, I mean, there is kind of... well, one thing you also mentioned earlier, but system immersion is kind of a tricky thing to handle, and there's you can't always control it. Like you were talking about earlier in Dark Sun, you felt you were at odds. The rules themselves were sort of at odds with your system immersion because you were playing a fighter, but you weren't acting like a fighter, at least according to the way you wanted to role play your characters.
Oh yeah, that's just my shitty understanding of D&D rules. But I played Dark Sun was all grim and dark, and so I played an objectivist, desert super capitalist. But he was the tank of the group because everyone else was playing like either damage dealers or
controllers.
Yeah, controllers, and I was supposed to be run in and take the punishment for everybody, but what was in it for me? So we were terrible in combat as a result of that. So yeah, it is a really delicate balance between playing the system to win as much as you can win in a role-playing game, and playing it.
Do you feel that
what your story?
I mean, you mentioned that because it was a class system, because of D&D.
Yeah,
it felt like there are specific roles that each character needs to play, and what do you think? Like in your experience, do any of the other 3 systems you played, Wild Talents, Dirty Fortune, or Call of Cthulhu, have they had the same kind of problems? I mean, or Eclipse Phase? We actually have played Eclipse Phase.
I'm not. I think Eclipse Phase is pretty well balanced. From what we have played of it so far. Granted, I think Eclipse Phase, if it's going to go gonzo, is in the tech.
Yeah.
If you give somebody too much tech, they can get themselves out of anything.
It becomes the movie Eon Flux.
Yeah, it really... Like, nanotech... I have dissemblers. My character has dissemblers, because if we come against something horrible... I'm dissembling it and on a molecular level, and I'm going to walk away.
Real men don't walk away from disassembly.
Yeah, so the tech would be where that goes off the rails. I don't think you can min-max a Dirty World.
Yeah.
A Dirty World is a rhetoric system, which is why I love it. You know,
Yeah.
it's components for arguing with people, and I think that's why it's fantastic. And then Call of Cthulhu, you're so weak, you can't min max shit. You could be.
There actually are.
You could be a superhero.
There are ways to do that. I mean, it is pretty. Not many, but you can in some ways. Mostly through applications of bombs and having a power of 18 and Yithian. Well, I mean, I'm just talking about normal out of the gate. Well, you can't get. There's no Yithian lightning guns in the player character armors.
Well, yeah, I'm not smart enough to do that stuff because I'm so.
It's not very much. You are right. I mean, characters in Call of Cthulhu are very vulnerable.
Yeah, I'm so rules light that I don't know how to do that. So, if anything, being the noob, I go real heavy into story, but real light on actually being effective. Take Lady Gaga, for instance, who performed at a club while the heist was going down. I'm more towards the ineffectual characters than anything else.
Right.
Oh yeah, I was about to say I learned a lesson from running the Cyberpunk game too.
Yeah.
You have to start at 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Only later do you crank it up to 10 or 11.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. You kind of have to. There is sort of a build up in a game. I mean, games are different from normal linear stuff because you don't have one person saying this is the linear arc or this is the character arc. I mean, you can have ideas for it. Like you had the ideas for the Hitman's character arc, and it worked out that way. But that was totally David's choice as a player to do that. It could have worked out a totally different way. He could have tried to kill Tom, or something like. Or you could have sided with the cultists. I mean, there are any number of things.
But dude, but you got to say dinner and a show, and that's what you will be remembered for right now.
So, I mean, it is kind of a forever a balancing act to keep people immersed in a world, in a role-playing game. So, any final thoughts about this particular subject in terms of venture design or dealing with player character art, murder, or talk it out?
I don't care how badass of a GM or a game designer you think you are.
Yeah,
you'll make a mistake.
Yeah,
every single time.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, the final thing I want to say is, Tom, you mentioned you had that list of things that you could do regardless of the situation. And that's one of the things I always do is I always come up with, encounter fodder that I could throw in at any given, if I don't know which section they're going to go. If there's a flow chart and there's I design 3 choices and then players take choice 5, then oh shit, they walk off the beaten path and I can hey, there's
I actually had written down, dead guy starts talking to them. Yeah. But I loved it. I got to use it for the colonel in the bathtub.
Right. See, I mean, that works.
Or the radio. The first time around, I think if I were to run part 1 again, I'd use the radio again. I didn't use it so much in the second set you're running. We had the radio with people pleading for help down in the lab below. Please let us out. We're not horrible mutated monsters that want to kill you now.
We're totally trustworthy, guys. Seriously. Can I sense motive through the radio?
And of course, the ghoul, the recurring character.
Yes, Grunfeld. All right, so with that cheery note of the cannibalistic human monster. Underground dweller, we will take a break. When we come back, Tom will have a letter, and then of course we'll have shout outs and anecdotes and all that good stuff.
It'll be wonderful.
Yep.
You every step of the way, no matter what you do or what I have to say, kicking and screaming.
Dear Palladium Games, we've had a good long run, haven't we? We have had great adventures and many hours of excitement, but if you still have any long-term memory left in that rotting on life support brain of yours, you know how that turned out. Yet after all this time, my anger has finally faded, leaving only pity. To make you understand why, I need to go back to the beginning. Once upon a time, way back in 1985, there was a small kid named Tom. He had just left a Catholic kindergarten and was now entering a real public school. No longer stuck in a stifling religious school, he found himself being flooded with light and stimulating ideas. Some of this new light took the form of comic books. One in particular stuck with me, Eastman and Laird's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It resonated greatly with my 5-year-old mind. Anthropomorphic turtles who are ninjas fighting other ninjas. It was like a huge piece of awesome cake drizzled in awesome sauce. I fell in love with it, and it was soon my favorite piece of media. And that's when I met you. You walked up to me in the cafeteria one day and said something to me. Do you remember what it was? I do. You said, "You like that comic, huh? How would you like to play a game where you are a character in that world?" You had me at hello. Soon we were inseparable. We gathered a group of like-minded kids, and soon we were our own clique. We played our characters, and we looked out with disdain at the other groups who weren't with us. We bitched about the kids who played sports, yet we didn't actually say anything to them. You see, they had the power to beat the crap out of us. No, the ones we most derided were the ones who were most like us. The ones who liked to play pretend on paper like we did, but who used a different system. We would shake our heads and say, "Look at those morons playing D&D. Why would I want to play some elf with a bow when I can play a cheetah with an AK-47? And oh, how we laughed. Sure, a few of us tried the other systems, but we always came back. They were great years, weren't they? We ninja'd and turtled our way through elementary school, reveling in the sheer awesomeness of it. And you even came out with new things for us to pretend. You said, "Hey, how about we play human ninjas or James Bond? How about superheroes?" And then one magical day you said, "How about we play a game where you can play anything you want in a post-apocalyptic Earth?" And there it was, every nerdy kid's dream come true. I know how I felt when I started playing. I thought, this is as good as it's going to get. I was sure that this kind of fun would last forever. And then junior high came. I was getting older, and the fun was still there. However, I noticed some of the older kids who were in our group stopped playing. I chalked it up to the siren call of the sports field and girls, but there were rumblings of another sort, whispered rumors of Palladium not being as fun as it once was. I dismissed it, of course, but the doubt remained in the back of my mind. I think I only noticed it myself in high school. The 80s were long gone and the 90s had taken their place. I gotten old enough to notice a strong trend. The other systems that I had long ignored were adapting to the times. D&D and White Wolf were coming out with new additions, rules, and system changes, and many new source books. Oh, you were still putting out new content, although your release schedule was becoming increasingly unreliable. But worst of all, I noticed that your core system wasn't being updated or changed. I thought this a bit odd, but perhaps you didn't know. I and legions of your fans wrote letters imploring you to adapt with the changing times and your older fan base. Imagine our shock when you not only refused us, but openly derided us for daring to question your genius system. That was the beginning of the end, I think. I still thought of you as a good friend, even though my now teenage mind began to play other systems. Yet you got even more strident, accusing your friends of abandoning you. It took me a while, but I had a revelation about you. It was painful to admit, but you had an addiction. You were addicted to your old rules set. You were still a font for fantastic ideas, but your addiction was holding you back. You had a problem, but I and the rest of your friends tried to help. We had intervention after intervention, yet every time you lashed out, utterly convinced you didn't have a problem. Soon your addiction was rendering you incapable of doing your job. Still, you were unwilling to let your addiction go. No matter what solution was posted on RPG.net, no matter how many ex-friends complained about you on their blogs, your addiction continued. Finally, I had to let you go. It was a painful thing, but I couldn't be an enabler any longer. Any money I gave to you would only make you indulge in your addiction more. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I did what I had to do. And now look at you. Your addiction has just about killed you. You haven't released any new material. You've withdrawn from public life, and now you lay on a deathbed, a slave to your addiction. Once we were the best of friends, a close group who gamed through thick and thin. Now you are a cautionary tale of addiction and hubris, a warning of what can happen when your pining for your glory days overtakes reality. I must wash my hands of you, Palladium, because I will not be stuck in my own past. As self-help author Wayne Dyer said, "Stop acting as if life is a rehearsal. The past is over and gone." You are my past, Palladium. You are done. Go. Also, never try to fuck a crying woman holding a harpoon gun. Just a heads up.
Just to be who you are, just to get what you have got. I won't accept restraint, and I will not hide behind fear. Yeah, I will be afraid, but I'll stand up. I will stay right here. So wait. Oh no, 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 you can't go.
And we're back. That was a great letter there, Tom.
No,
so,
it wasn't.
No, it was. Well,
No, wait. I'm a genius.
yes, you're obviously a genius, and I'm being very specific
Yes,
when
you
I'm
are.
referring to the contents of this letter. So, anyway, it's not at all an in-joke that you, the listener, won't ever be on. So, anyways, we have shout-outs. Tom, you have the first one. You mentioned...
Yeah, actually, first I have a graphic novel that it's not new, but I just recently picked it up.
Yeah.
It was actually I got it at Borders, our bookstore going out of business.
Yes.
Yeah, I got Elephant Men, which is kind of a future Los Angeles
Yeah, sci-fi
with animals engineered to be soldiers if they were rescued, and then sent just and allowed to live out their lives in Los Angeles. And,
Right.
And there's actually really good stories involving these.
I've read a few issues of it. I've heard of it. It's gotten good reviews too.
Yeah,
So.
it's like
Is that Image who puts that out? Who puts that out?
I think so.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just them trying to just live in society. And
It's kind of like the one I read was like sort of a noir thing. Like a guy was a detective or something.
the hippo.
Yeah, I guess.
Well,
I don't
Hippo, Hip Flask is his name. Yeah, he's probably the main character in it.
Okay.
But actually, my favorite, what I got was called Shock Rock.
Okay.
It's actually one of them. It's this Howard Stern guy runs a radio broadcast from this orbiting satellite.
Yeah.
And they invite one of them on there, who's one of the more psychotic ones, which is this crocodile.
Okay.
And it's it's him on this Howard Stern show, which is him like responding in just two word sentences, but
Yeah.
they start really pushing him to come on, man, get crazy, and he does, and it's
Oh.
not nice.
Nice.
That was my favorite and the one I got.
All right. My first one will be actually Ian Moody, the artist for The New World, an RPPR favorite. He is coming out with some custom dice on Shapeways.com. Shapeways is a 3D printing service, so you can upload a 3D model, and then they'll actually print it on some crazy high-tech machine. And
Technology!
Yeah, it's technology. And he has these dice that are actually really cool. Each face is like a skull. But the number of teeth represents the number on the die. So like one tooth, number 1, 6 teeth, 6, and it's very cool. So if you want
Ian
some
Moody's
custom
awesome.
Yes, if you want some custom dice, check it out. He also has a couple other things like some Cthulhu Mythos models, like Nyarlathotep, Amigo.
Yeah, the bloody tongue model. I've seen.
Yeah. Very very cool stuff. So what was your next one?
And the next one is a movie.
Yeah.
That I recently purchased. It's you probably I don't know, you probably would have heard of it. It's actually I think it's a bootleg DVD I bought on eBay on Amazon eBay on Videodrome.
Yeah.
James Woods, really weird David Cronenberg movie.
Yeah. All Hail the New Flesh.
All Hail the New Flesh. Your chest is a VCR.
Yeah, apparently, and your hand is a gun, or a meat gun, or something. Or no, that was Existence?
It was a gun.
Yeah.
The gun fused with his hand. And
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, fun stuff. Good times.
But maybe I'll come back to this in my other one.
Oh, okay. Next, I have Amnesia: Dark Descent. It's a computer game I just started playing. I got it on Steam a while ago on a sale, and it's a first-person game, but it's not a shooter because you don't have any guns in it. You wake up in a Gothic castle, and you have amnesia. And you apparently wrote yourself a letter saying, you need to kill Alexander. Your name is Daniel. You need to kill this guy Alexander. He's somewhere in the castle. Yeah. Good luck. Oh, also, there's an unkillable monster chasing you. All right. Have fun. And it has great sanity mechanics, like the Call of Cthulhu video game, but better. And it has a lot of mechanics on hiding, opening doors. Like you can open doors a crack and see if there's a monster through that. If you stay in the darkness too long, you can start going crazy. It's like I've just been playing for like a few hours, and I've seen bugs crawl through my screen and stuff like that. Vision starts shaking. It's very. I've only seen one monster, so it's very fun.
Nice.
And it's cheap. It's on Steam. It's like $10 or $20 at most, and that's when it's not on sale. There are lots of sales because it's Steam, because they're digital crack pushers. I mean that's what they are.
Yeah.
They are, seriously. Oh my God, they're so good at selling that shit. What was your next one?
Next one was another movie, not by David Cronenberg, but very David Cronenberg-like, which was The Brain, which was a
Yeah.
Actually, you remember the movie Reanimator?
Yeah.
The guy that played the scientist of whom Herbert West Decapitated.
Yeah.
He plays the bad guy in this one.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah,
for him.
it's like this.
It's good that he's staying in.
Yeah, it's like this cable, like this self-improvement cable access show.
Yeah.
Is actually like basically taking brainwaves from people, mind controlling them to feed this brain that's slowly growing, and then
I hate it when that happens.
yeah, then it of course develops. Apparently it has eyes and a mouth too.
Of course, because
And the
brains
bigger-
need mouths.
Yeah. And the bigger it gets, it of course starts eating people. What I like is the weird hallucinations it can make people experience.
Oh yeah.
Which it's the kind of effects that why I love '80s horror movies. I love the actual all the effects are real. Like the monster's hand is coming through the wall and you can see it and it's real.
Nice.
So that I will always have a soft spot. Like God, The Fly was one of my favorites of the '80s.
Jeff Goldblum, yes.
Yes.
I liked him in Killing Hipsters, that Charles Bronson movie, where he kills hipsters.
Is that a retro coat? No, it's today.
No, is that a vintage coat, man? No, it's a right now coat. So, anyways, I have another one. Theory of International Politics and Zombies. It's a book
Ross bought a book involving zombies.
No, this is a shock, right?
Waka waka.
It describes how, like various political theories and sociological and psychological, what would happen if zombies were real, if they started showing up. Would there be a zombie rights movement? How would it affect society, religion, and all kinds of stuff? And it's a slim volume. I've only started reading it, but it's very entertaining. And it's very informative, too. The guy really thought this stuff out. So if you're curious, I mean, zombie stories are always focused on the immediate, the here and now. And I like looking at the greater picture, the larger picture, So, yeah.
What would this do with the economy? And
exactly. How would it? Well, what would neoconservatives have to say about zombies? I mean, would that be proof we have to invade Iran? Probably.
Yeah. Or would those be the ideal worker?
Yeah, exactly.
Tireless and don't need money.
Yep. I'm sure Zizek would have something to say about it. And in his spittle-inducing voice. And did you have any? Well, actually, Caleb has a couple of shout-outs. I'll just mention one more. 3-word phrase, a webcomic. It's a humorous comic strip, and it's just got silliness. And my favorite one is... the first panel, the kids are playing like, oh, the floor is made of lava. Second panel shows them that they've tied one of the kids up and thrown him on the carpet as a sacrifice, and we must make a sacrifice. And the third panel shows that an ice cream truck is driven into a tree right outside their house, showing that their little faith has been paid off. The sacrifices work. So, anyways, Caleb.
Yeah. Speaking of zombies,
Yeah.
there's a Flash game on Newgrounds now called Rebuild, and it's a zombie real-time strategy game. So you are in charge of this little caged compound of humans, prepared against the onslaught, and you have to, scavenge for food and build housing and keep everyone from going insane. And eventually you can draft a constitution. You can cure zombieism. There's lots of ways to win. It's a really clever little Flash game. That's pretty much like so you want to play the latest story arc of The Walking Dead? Here you go. You have to deal with all this. It's called Rebuild. It's on Newgrounds. It's really fun. It's a good way to kill and 4 or 5 hours where you should be doing something else.
What are you talking about?
And
gaming is more important than all.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then I mentioned Andrew Vox earlier. He's a noir writer. He's really good. I suggest starting off with his short stories, which is in this collection called Born Bad. But he's written a lot of standalone novels called like The Getaway Man and Last Train Leaving.
You also mentioned Haiku.
Sheila and a novel called Haiku. He's by day. He also has his main moneymaker is this series of novels called the Burke novels about this private investigator. But he's a child advocate by day, child advocate lawyer. He has an eye patch on his author's photo. He is someone you would roll to play in a game. So he can't do anything to the horrible child molesters and abusers he does in his job every day. So his fiction is sort of a release like that. So imagine an episode of SVU if they just got sick of it and raided the armory and went out and cleaned the streets,
like players would do.
Yeah, like players would do.
Yeah.
And it's fun noir stuff. It gets pretty twisted. So I like that. And then I mentioned Thomas Ligotti, the Lovecraft's reincarnation. So.
I have his collection, Songs of a Dead Dreamer, and I really like that. Some of his stuff is... There's one he did about Harlequins that was in... I can't remember. There's one called the Cthulhu 2000. It's like a Cthulhu mythos anthology of modern writers, and he's in there. And Harlequin I really like. Songs of a Dead Dreamer is really good too. But I haven't read the Tenebrae...
Teatro Grotesco.
Teatro Grotesco.
It's another short stories. I mean, it's not like rah, something's coming to eat me, scary. Yeah. It's very dreamlike and almost poetic,
cosmic dread,
and very anticlimactic.
Yeah.
And, but so it's a special taste. You can't read a lot of it in one sitting.
Yeah.
You get pretty sad.
Apparently
he's got a book out now called The Conspiracy Against the Human Race, which is like a non-fiction philosophy text that I really want to read it, but it's supposed to be like the most horrifying thing ever written according to the Amazon reviews, because it's just like, philosophical, ethical, logical justifications for, humanity being an accident and your life being meaningless.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, it's a good guy to write horror. If he honestly believes
there's one
so.
novel I have of his I haven't had a chance to read. I picked it up used. It was cheap, called My Work Is Not Yet Done, that I've wanted to finish. I'm horrible at finishing novels, about a corporate worker who starts going crazy, starts hearing a voice in his head, and,
Sounds
fun
like
stuff.
Tom Ligotti,
yeah, exactly.
That's my shout out.
So finally we have our anecdote.
Also,
Hi.
Yes, also by Caleb. So why don't you regale us with your...
Okay, little setup. I run an after...
Immerse us.
Yeah, I'm immersing you. I run an after-school program for drawing and making comic books for my kids at my high school, and they just draw. So, and they asked my advice on like paneling and stuff because I couldn't draw a stick figure, but I know how comics work.
Have you gotten Scott McCloud books for them?
Yeah, Scott McCloud and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we do little exercises and lessons. So they work on that, but basically I'm just babysitting because they got to work. I can't interfere too much because they've got to draw and that takes time. So I was down there working on the next game I want to run, and I was writing it, and I had my Eclipse phase book with me. And my kid was asking me what I was doing, and I said, "Well, I'm trying to write this game so I can, And I always mention whenever I get paid to do something for writing, because it gets kids excited. I neglect to mention that I'm getting like a stick of gum and bus fare, but I always try to mention I'm getting paid because it gets them excited. Yeah. So I say I'm going to get paid to write this thing for this role playing convention. And they're like, oh, they're cool. And they were looking at the art in the books, so they thought that was really cool that they could do that for a living, drawing role-playing books. And eventually I had this crowd of me around me because, they're all nerds like I was in high school, and we're talking about role-playing games. But I co-run it with an art teacher, and she's a 50-year-old mother. She's nearing retirement age. And she came around to see what we were working on, and I told her I was working on a role-playing game. And she's like, well, what's that? And I'm like, okay, kids, sit down. We're gonna teach Miss Q. I'm gonna give her a name, Miss Q. What a role playing game is. So is this like when you play on the boards? I'm like, oh, that's not really a board game. So I write on the whiteboard strength, dexterity, intelligence, and charisma, and then I write a little normed curve. I do 8, 6, 4, 2. And I'm like, okay, Miss Q. Put your stats where you want them. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, okay, well, each number is going to go into one of these stats, and it'll tell you how good you are at a certain thing. He's like, well, I want to be smart. Good teacher. So I put 8 in intelligence. She's like, I want to be strong. So I'm like, all right, 6 in strength. And she's like, I will be... the next one's charisma. So I put 4, and then I put 2 in dexterity. I'm like, all right, so you're Miss Q, the wise. Or Miss Q the clumsy, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And she gets like offensive when I refer to that. I'm like, your character, not you. So I go, okay, your daughter's been kidnapped by a troll. He's taken her to the other side of a bridge. If you don't go get her, the troll's going to eat her and she's going to die. What do you do? Like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, you want to go get your daughter back, or you're just going to let her die? That would be horrible. And she's like, no, I'll get my daughter. So I'm like, all right, you're at the bridge. The troll is standing in the middle of the bridge. He is not going to let you pass. What are you going to do? She's like, can I kill him? And I'm like, yeah, you could try. He's a troll. He's really strong. It's in a role-playing game. You want to play towards your character's strengths. And so you're really smart. She's like, well, can I idea him? And I'm like, well, here's this. And I have a 10-sided die, for I am a good nerd. And I give it to her. And I'm like, okay, so if you roll under your stat, if you roll 8 or under, I'll give you an idea on how to beat the troll. And so she does. And I'm like, all right, there's a cooking fire nearby. So you can get a torch from the cooking fire, and the wooden bridge is also there. So while you won't be able to get your daughter, the troll will die, and it's not worth one meal to die and, never come back because he's standing in the middle of the bridge. She's like, okay, so I'll threaten him with it. I'm like, yeah, all right. So you go across, and you save your daughter, and you save the day, and everything's great. So congrats, you won your first role-playing game. She's like, well, what's on the other side of the bridge? And I'm like, I don't know, some trees, roads. Could we make a life there? And so at this point, it's starting to get a little weird, and the kids are like cocking their eyebrows. I'm like, what? What do you mean? He's like, well, could we live there? Could we live on that side of the bridge? I'm like, yeah, there's another town a few miles away. Well, what kind of town? And I'm like, they have good schools. This
is actually very logical players.
There's an excellent public transit system. Yeah, it's fine.
Low property taxes.
The lovely town B. And she's like, I'm gonna set the bridge on fire. I'm like, wait, you're just gonna burn the troll anyway? He's like, yeah, he stole my daughter. You can't get away with that.
She is a player.
And I know. I'm just kind of baffled. I'm like, okay, you set it on fire. What happens? It burns. Is the troll dead? I'm like, yeah, he's screaming. He's on fire. I'll yell, you never mess with my daughter again. I'm like, okay, yeah. The bridge collapses into the raging rapids. Drowning is a sweet relief after the hellish retribution you brought down upon that evil troll. You skip into the distance. Your daughter loves you more now. The end. She's like, So that's a role-playing game, huh? I'm like, yeah, pretty much. I mean, the numbers get more complicated, but... And she's like, well, I don't think I'd like it. And then we just ended the club, and she left. And that was it.
How did the other players, or the other students...
The kids were baffled. They couldn't even laugh. They were so surprised. I couldn't either. I was just like, what? Can we make a life there? Yeah.
See, now you can with this you could make a theory saying player gamer logic is a result of playing the game, that anyone who plays a game becomes infected with it, that they lose all touch with reality and then they turn into murderous asocial,
gamer logic is a deadly meme. It takes over the mind of even older 50-year-old art teachers. But
I must kill them and drink my beer from their skulls,
Burn him. I just love it.
Yeah. So I mean that's a hell of an anecdote.
It was weird.
I would love to have do simple role playing scenarios with older people who've never played before and see how bloodthirsty they get. If not constrained by society or laws. I mean, you could make Road Warrior would happen because art teachers have no problems murdering trolls.
Pretty much. At least that one didn't.
Or Lord Humongous.
Yeah. It got pretty messed up. I didn't expect that.
Wow. And it kind of makes me want to design a system that could be played just with 2 minutes of explanation. So
pretty much.
Yeah. So all right. With that, I mean, what else? I was immersed in a world of fantasy.
I'm glad.
I think that our teacher was. That's why she was role playing such a vengeful character.
Role playing.
All right. So we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
You every step of the way, no matter what you do or what I have to say, kicking and screaming, just drag me out of here. I will cause you sorrow and I will not endure, so wait. Oh no, you can't go. I thought you said you'd know. No, I didn't. are just to get what you have got. I won't accept restraint, and I will not hide behind fear. Yeah, I will be afraid, but I'll stand up. I will stay right here. So wait. Oh no, 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 you can't go. I thought you said you know. No, I didn't think so. I am wide awake and immersed in confusion, bare-boned and busted up and lost in disillusion. And if I had just one little spark inside of me, I wouldn't be so scared of the dark. I am wide awake and lost in disillusion, bare-boned and busted up and lost in disillusion. And if I had just one little spark inside of me, I wouldn't be so scared of the dark side.